So now we're going to take a look at the chord of C, or chord of C major, to give it its full title. We're going to take our first finger and put it in the first fret on the second string, second finger in the second fret on the fourth string, and our third finger in the third fret on the fifth string. And we would like to get especially this first finger nice and close to the fret to allow the other fingers to be able to stretch that bit further. If you're finding it difficult to get the third finger in particular right way across, that's okay. Once you get it as far over as you can. So as we've said before, we want to get our fingers as close as possible. So get that finger close to the fret, and that should allow these ones to be able to stretch a bit further. If you can, when you're practicing, keep stretching your fingers. Obviously you don't want to hurt your hand, but do try and stretch them a little bit if you can. So that's your chord of C. We're going to add that to some of the chords we've looked at before, and we're going to make a new song out of it. Not a new song, a song that was written by Benny King. This is called Stand By Me. And their chord sequence will run like this. So we have the chord of G. That's going to run for 2 measures or 2 bars, so that'll be 8 beats. Then we're going to go to the chord of E minor. Again, that's for 2 bars, 2 measures, another 8 beats. Then we're going to change to the chord of C, and that's going to happen just for 4 beats. Then to the chord of D for 4 beats, and finally back to our G chord. Now, just to run through that sequence in a little bit more detail. So we have our chord of G, and to get to E minor, we've seen this before, we can leave that first finger on that string, just slide it over a little bit to allow the other finger to come into position, and that gives us our E minor chord. Now to change from E minor to C, we can leave this finger in place, lift off the first finger, and then put those 2 fingers back down together, and we have our chord of C. So let's just look at that again. So E minor, try and get this finger hovering over the 5th string, lift off your first finger and put the 2 fingers down together. And like we talked about before, do this exercise without strumming. Try to lift your fingers off at the same time, get them into position and put them down at the same time. Lift them off, get them into position and put them down together. And again, keep doing that backwards and forwards. Be careful to make sure your fingers are going to the correct place though. I mean, there's no point in practicing this if they're going to the wrong place, obviously. So make sure they're doing the right thing and practice that backwards and forwards. And when you're comfortable doing that, you can speed it up a little bit. And then we'll add it into the song. Now there is one other place we need to take a look at, which is the C changing to the D chord. So there are no fingers in common here. We just have to lift off all 3 of the fingers and put down those 3 fingers onto D. We've been playing D for a number of lessons now, so your fingers should be reasonably familiar with where you have to go for that chord. So lift off the 3 fingers together, get them into position and put them down together. And like we spoke about before, do it in the reverse order. Lift off those 3 fingers from the D chord and put them down together onto the C chord. And like we said earlier, you just keep doing that backwards and forwards until you can play those 2 chords without any difficulty. Now let's try adding this into our song. So we want, first of all, just to do down strums. We want, as I said, 2 measures for G, 2 measures for E minor, 1 bar for C, 1 bar for D, and back to the G again. So let's go through it nice and slowly after 4. 2, 3, 4. So we have G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stay with G. 1, 2, 3, 4. E minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stay with E minor. 2, 3. Get ready to change to C. C. 2, 3. Then D. 1, 2, 3. Back to G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stay with G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the sequence repeats. G, 2, 3, 4. Stay with G. 1, 2, 3. E minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get that third finger ready. 2, 3. Then change to C. 1, 2, 3. D. 1, 2, 3. Back to G. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you might have noticed there's a lot of G chords in the middle of that sequence, or when the sequence ends and then it goes to repeat again. But we need all of those there to fill in with the lyrics. If you're just practicing the sequence, or you just want to get familiar with just changing the chords, you don't necessarily have to stick to that exact amount of strums per chord. You can just go 4 strums for each chord if you like. That's perfectly fine if you're just trying to get familiar with the chord changes. Now, the next thing we want to do with this particular song is we want to add in the rhythm that we looked at before, our kind of default rhythm. So just having another look at that, we have our G. So if you remember, we're leaving out the first upstroke after the first down strum, and then carry on, leaving out the third down strum. Okay, let's just put that rhythm into the chord sequence now. So together after 4, 2, 3, 4. G. Stay with G. E minor. C. D. G. So that's starting to sound a little bit more like Stand By Me. Now, if we want to keep those chords that we're using, G, E minor, C and D, and if you want to play along with the Benny King version of the track, well then we're going to have to change the pitch of the chords. Now, what we can do is we can use a gadget called a capo. So I'm just going to get my capo here so I can show it to you. Okay, so this is a capo. I mean, there's lots of different types of them. This particular one, I'm going to put it on the 2nd fret. So, like we would with your finger, you want your fingers close to the frets. We also want the capo to go close to the frets. So, I have this rubber part here beside the fret, and then I'll just tighten the capo. Some of them are spring operated, other ones have like a nylon kind of strap that goes around. Either way, once you have the correct capo for your guitar. So this capo is made for a steel string guitar. If you have a nylon string guitar, you'd have to get a capo that is suitable for a nylon string guitar. They are slightly different. Now, this means that we are now treating this as the beginning of the guitar. So now this is our 1st fret, this is our 2nd fret, this is our 3rd fret. So if we want to play G, we'll be playing it here. So it has raised the pitch of the chord. Our E minor, C, D, and then back to G. So it means we can change the pitch of the song, but we don't have to learn any new chords. So this is very useful. We could use this on any of the songs that we've learned so far, but the chords that I've given you for those songs are the correct pitches. It just happens to be that in this song, if we wanted to play at the same pitch as the Benny King version, we would have to learn different chords than we already knew, and some of them are a little bit too difficult at this stage. So this capo means we can keep the chords that we already know and still be able to play the song at the correct pitch. So very useful. A lot of people use these to suit their voice, so if they find that they're able to play a song with G, E minor and so on, but maybe it's too low for their voice, that they can then put the capo on a different fret and until they find a pitch that suits their voice. So this can be very useful. So let's just have one final look at that song. We'll use the capo, we'll leave the capo there. If you don't have a capo, don't worry about it. You can just go back and review the earlier version that we did without it. And also, you just remember you only need the capo if you want to play at the same pitch as Benny King, or if you want to play along with his track of the song. If you're just playing it on your own, or you don't have a capo, just playing it as we did earlier is perfectly fine. So let's give it a try after 4. So 2, 3, 4, so G. E minor. C. D. And then back to G. Okay, and just a thought here that if you were finding C a little bit of a stretch without the capo, well then by moving everything up the 2 frets, that should make that stretch a little bit easier for you. So that could help if you're finding it, the C chord, a little bit difficult, a little bit of a stretch for your fingers. One final thing to remember at the chord of C is we want to avoid hitting that 6th string. So there is an X over that 6th string. So that's your chord of C. So as much as possible when you're practicing your strumming, try to avoid hitting that string for the C chord. And like we spoke about before, I mean, you might need to practice sometimes where you're looking at your right hand, making sure it's avoiding that 6th string for that C chord. And then other times you might like to practice the other way, where you're purposely looking at your left hand and trying to listen to what your right hand is doing and try to gauge the distance that your right hand is traveling to try and catch that 5th string. Okay, so keep practicing that as much as possible, and we'll see you in the next lesson.